Welcome to a special edition of the BioCentury This Week podcast. Today we are previewing the fourth BioCentury BayHelix East-West Biopharma Summit. It's scheduled to kick off on March 3rd in Singapore. And joining me to help set the stage for the event are Wendy Pan, who is chair of BayHelix, and as a partner at Goodwin, she leads the Asia Life Sciences practice for the firm. We also have Anirudh Papli, a partner at McKinsey. And we have a special guest, Ku Shi, who joins us from Singapore. She heads up Clavist Bio, which is a early stage life sciences investor that has Temasek as a shareholder. And from the BioCentury side, we're joined by Josh Berlin, who heads up BioCentury's conferences, and editor-in-chief Simone Fishburne, who of course is something of a fixture on the BioCentury This Week podcast, as well as our chief tennis correspondent. Now, this is the fourth time we are hosting this event, and it's the second time we're hosting it in Singapore. It comes as we are seeing record cross-border deal flow, as Western biopharmas increasingly look to Asia for innovative assets. And we're also seeing the rise of the so-called Newco model. If you were at JP Morgan last month in San Francisco, you no doubt heard a lot about these companies being formed, launched in the West around really cool, interesting assets from Asia, bispecifics, ADCs, you name it, often with Western VCs, be they from Europe or the US, and they're letting these companies go off into the wild. Now, I'd like to bring in Josh and Simone now to kick us off. Josh, BioCentury has hosted the summit in the Bay Area, in Boston, and Singapore. Why Singapore once again?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff, and thanks for everyone joining today. Well, first off, just want to say that we're really excited to be coming back to Singapore March 3rd to 5th, working with our partners BayHelix and McKinsey, also working with really a who's who of Singapore leaders from across the ecosystem, from Clavist Bio to Temasek, EDBI, A-Star, Enterprise Singapore, and many more that we don't have time to mention, who have really helped all of us here at BioCentury organize this event, been so welcoming in terms of offering suggestions and making sure that we had everybody that you want to meet. If you come to this event, you're going to meet them all at the event, all the key leaders from Singapore. And in terms of why we're returning to Singapore, we think Singapore is the perfect place to really discuss this conference theme that you mentioned, Jeff, about how to globalize Asia innovation from cross-border licensing to the Newco model. Singapore, real gateway to Asia, and we plan to highlight all the innovation coming out of Singapore and also the innovation coming out of what we're calling Asia's emerging arc of innovation. So that includes Singapore, China, Korea, Japan, Australia, and India, as well as other countries. Like you said, I think this is really one of the hottest topics that's happening right now in the industry. And it's a real good opportunity to come out to Singapore and sort of see it for yourself, meet the key players, get to know them, find opportunities for yourself, for your firms. And I think that's one of the reasons why I think, have a really great turnout, in particular of both investors and multinational pharma BD&L executives. So just a few, if I could just name drop a few investors who will be part of the program. We have Fida Alzakoff of Temasek, Andre Andonian of Flagship, Ansper Gadagi of MPM, Amit Kakkar of Novo Holdings. We got James Huang of Panacea Venture, Aki Taburo of Remages Ventures, and the list just kind of goes on and on and on. And I think if you come to the event, you'll get a chance to meet with all these folks and hopefully talk about opportunities. And we have the same kind of list on the pharma BD&L side as well. So a real good opportunity to get in front of pharmas that are looking to in-license innovation, like you mentioned.
And of course, we have Ku Shi, who we'll be hearing from in a moment. But Simone, you are preparing us for the scene setter. You've been writing about the Newco model. What are some quick thoughts about what you've been seeing just to help set the stage for some of the things we'll be discussing.
Thanks, Jeff. Just prior to us starting recording, Kushi and I were mentioning, well, it's been a year actually since we saw each other. And, we have been interested in this arc of innovation in Asia for a while. We obviously had this last year in Singapore. And I think the really big difference between now and then is that this flood of interest that the West has kind of figured out what we sort of knew back then, right? And so I can tell you that what is extraordinary to me is the amount of inbound interest we have. For a long time, Asia companies, and we've known this, have a great amount of innovation, and they are seeking financing and so on. Now I have VCs telling me, how can I get to find these companies? How can I get to your event and meet these Asian Newcos? Who's going to be there? And it's really become an incredibly hot topic. Jeff, you mentioned that it was all over JP Morgan. I was in New York this week. It was the main conversation that I had with biotech bankers and VCs. I just want to say one more thing because I'm going to throw this to Kushi in a minute for her comments. But, you mentioned the scene setter, which our CEO, Dave Flores, is going to be moderating. What we did is we looked at the Newcos that were created specifically by our definition, which is companies that were created in the West based on assets that were licensed from Asia companies. And these were Newcos that were created. And because it is the year of the snake, we created a snake out of this timeline that I encourage you to go look at. It's rather cute, I think, not only because I made it with my colleagues. They did the snake bit. But I think it is really interesting where you look at these companies and they are all in incredibly hot spaces. We will be talking more at this conference and in other places about that. But I think just what the snake shows you is this, what I've called galloping pace. It sort of started off as a trickle, a couple, 4 or 5 last year, and then kaboom, like 5 or 4 companies announced with what was it, Jeff, like 5 within 10 days or something like that, something
That's
insane like that.
Correct,
so,
yeah.
Right. So, Kushi, maybe you want to tell us what you're thinking about unless Jeff has a different question for you, but I just think this inbound enthusiasm is incredible.
Thanks, Simon. I think what we are seeing on the ground and just happened in the last year is really, I would have said that it really exceeds our expectations. Like you said, very, very strong momentum and a lot of interest. I think what has changed the conversation, right? When Clevis Bio was started 3 years ago, because we believe that it's really, really great substrates and innovation coming out from Singapore and Asia. But what had changed last year is people was asking, tell me more. They are coming to us and tell me more what's happening in Singapore. I mean, what else is happening in Asia? They all recognize the growth and strength of China, which is very inspiring for the rest of Asia. But I think people are paying attention. I'm saying that just from the investors that we are seeing, VC investors across the board, I would just say that some of them are early adopters that are here, like the Polaris and even Flagship and MPM. There are a lot of people coming to us last year, talking to how to be on the ground, how to get access to innovation, to participate in companies or start companies together. And I think we really feel across the board from VC and large multinational pharmas and medtech companies having a very serious interest to do something and do more, not just in China, but across the board in Asia and at Singapore. And we are very happy that it's a huge beneficiary because we are truly at a gateway and hub for the rest of Asia.
Kushi, thanks for those thoughts. I'd like to bring in Wendy now. Wendy, you wear 2 hats. Obviously, you're chair of BayHelix, and we'd like to hear a little bit about that coming up. BayHelix, of course, is the nonprofit that connects cross-border life sciences, business leaders in China, elsewhere in Asia, and the US. But you also are seeing a lot of deal flow coming across your desk. If you had to pick one of these Newcos that really got the ball rolling, Wendy, which would it be, would you say?
Okay, first of all, I want to use this opportunity to express our appreciation to BioCentury and all participants here. as a chairwoman, I would like to say we are so proud to be the partner and supporter of BioCentury for many years. BioCentury team has been on the ground in the trenches for many years. You know Asia very well, and this is one of the conferences you are organizing. You are really the trusted media for this space. And from BayHelix side, we have members who are entrepreneurs, who are investors, or advisors like McKinsey and Goodwin. We have participated in the cross-border transactions. Myself, last year, actually probably contributed to close to half of the total amount of the cross-border transactions by the deal size. In terms of Newco, I would say all of them are exciting, particularly they are actually concentrated in a few spaces: GLP-1, obesity drugs, and ADCs, and T-cell engagers. As a lawyer, I have participated and had our fair share contribution in the Newco formation or in transactions involving Newcos.
Excellent, Wendy. Thank you so much. And I've appreciated getting your insights for some of our coverage here at BioCentury. I'd like to bring in Ani now, joining us very early in the morning. I believe it's around 5 a.m., but as I mentioned, that's when the champions get up to train. We've talked about this Newco model, and I'm curious. Well, first up, I should say, much gratitude to McKinsey. McKinsey has been our insights partner for many, many years, at least 10 years across many of our conferences. And at each of the conferences, McKinsey does a special report that attendees get a close look on. Now, I'm not sure if you're ready to give us a teaser on what the East-West McKinsey report will be, and it's the focus of the big presentation that your team will do. But what other trends are you really looking at right now in biotech, pharma, across the arc of innovation in Asia?
Thanks, Jeff. As long as I have my coffee, I think 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. is just about fine. And this is probably a fantastic
You're a good sport.
Set of conversations going on. So quite exciting. We've been now, between some of us, Frank, Fang, and myself, have been looking at the Asia innovation over a time period. Almost like last 8 or 10 years, we have been observing how the evolution is happening. And if you see, it's quite interesting, right? The whole life sciences innovation in some shape and form started in Japan, right? With the first of the statins coming out of Japan in 1970s, that long back. And then over the years, we saw kind of Korea jump in, China jump in, Singapore jump in very different ways. And now we are also seeing India kind of jumping into the innovation fray as well, right? So starting from policies becoming more kind of supportive, biotech starting to emerge, pharma companies going more and more global. We've seen the pattern evolve. And each of these countries have taken very different paths to innovation and how they participate in the global value chain of innovation. Now, while of course Newco is the fad and all the buzz around it in the last 1 year, the assets coming out of Japan were always going global. You look at Leqembi, for example, the recent Alzheimer's drug that got approved. It's the first drug in Alzheimer's almost after 20 years, which is creating this kind of an efficacy and so on and so forth. And it's a global program now. You see the assets coming out of China, which are at the cutting edge of ADCs and bispecifics and so on, and they are going global. So what we were very intrigued was to say, if we look at the different archetypes of these players or these countries, what can we learn? And that's going to be a little bit of the theme for our report this year as well. When you look at Japan on one end, how have they continued to kind of come up with one breakthrough innovation after the other and kind of take it global from the get-go? And we wanted to compare it with the other end of the bookend, where a relatively new entrant in this own innovation space is India, where it's always been the generics capital of the world, has always been producing large volumes of products and so on. But how do they make a bit of a leap into the innovation game? And that is where the whole notion of frugal innovation came up. I think on one end, you have somebody who's like really created breakthrough science. On the other end, there are countries like India which are creating frugal innovation. You could do the same R&D, which probably West would have taken a couple of $1 billion to get to, being done in a few hundred millions. And what could we learn from that and see how does Asia become more and more prolific in terms of bringing these innovations to the world? So that's a little bit of the theme we would explore in our conversation. And that's what we are seeing happen across the region as well. But let me pause it and give it back to you, Jeff, and we'll take the conversation forward.
Excellent. Thanks for those insights. Kushi, I'd like to bring you back in now to maybe hear a bit about how Clavis portfolio is developing now that you're in your third year, and maybe how that reflects how the Singapore biotech ecosystem is beginning to evolve.
Thanks, Jeff. As I heard about Anirudh talking about the arc of innovation in Asia and different markets looking at how they leverage on their innovation and in a way find their own path and business model to ultimately make global impact on the patients. I think this is something that what Clavis Bio and really looking at the strength of Singapore, where Singapore in Asia, we think about then what's the business model and the type of companies that we will support, will build or invest that will actually have a really good path to harness the innovation and but yet understanding our ecosystem is still nascent and growing, and with then a clear path towards global commercialization towards patients. I said that because that is a continued learning and evolving, and at the same time benefiting from the constant growth of the ecosystem and the benefit of the inflow of the interest of funds as well as talents. So maybe in a nutshell, our portfolio companies, many of them are progressing well. One of our companies, the most advanced, actually just announced phase 2 results, just very, very encouraging. I would say right now that's probably one of our later stage, and that actually continue to receive global investor interest. We are also right now working very embedded with the local ecosystem, looking at ways, how do we take this early breakthrough innovations early to really start companies and be very hands-on and start companies. We actually have done a few, the likes of Sunbird and the likes of Medisix. That path has been really continue well and bringing also Western investors, investing in companies that maybe started in Singapore, but as I mentioned earlier on, from day one, they have to be in multiple locations to harness the capital talent. So our companies may start in Singapore, but they must also think about being in US and Europe. Now, another model that we have done is to say, how can we think about then companies outside of Singapore, but truly feels that Singapore innovation and capital can be an accelerant to their growth. So recently we announced a company investment. This is just give a model of how we are thinking, Leiden Labs. So Leiden Labs is one that's headquartered out of Netherlands in the Newco immunity space. Very exciting. They actually acquired and merged a company we started in Singapore with NUS because it's complementary. They got the team that's very agile and nimble and give them the Asian footprint into harnessing innovation, access to patients, and also further their clinical development. So those are the things that we're actively thinking from the model of starting innovation. How constantly are we thinking about a hybrid model? In a way, we also take inspiration of what's happening on what's the Western world thinking about new co-formation. If you think about it, what is really necessary for success? Breakthrough innovation, which we are seeing in Singapore. We are seeing that in different parts of Asia. We need high quality talents. How do we benefit the cross-border, cross-fertilization of talents? And then more important, how do we actually get access to a very international set of venture capital? And I think Singapore and many parts of Asia are really well poised to harness that. And perhaps then the Newco model will not be just taking assets, go to one place and start it out, but we actually allow much more cross-border, cross-market collaboration. Over back to you, Jeff.
Excellent. Thank you, Kushi. Well, Kushi will be on our Scene Setter panel, so you'll be able to get some more thoughts from her in conversation with Dave Flores, our CEO. And who else is on that panel, Josh?
We have a great Scene Setter panel. This is the panel that always kicks off the event at BioCentury events. So in addition to Kushi, we also have Andre Andonian, a flagship on there. We have Sharon Chan of J Labs, J&J. We have James Huang of Panacea and several others. Also on the program, we have a few of Kushi's portfolio companies. Some of her CEOs are also on the panels this month at the event, including Hummingbird and Engine Biosciences and a few others. So we really have a great collection of biotech CEOs, sort of rising stars that'll be on the program as well. The other thing, Jeff, I thought we could highlight maybe is I think you and the team have done a really good job at recruiting a great presenting company class this year. We got roughly 30 biotechs presenting on stage, and I think
30 and counting. We have a few more spots, but we're hoping to nail those down. So if you do have interest, reach out to me. And my favorite, I know along with my colleague Steve Usden, who profiled this company, we talk about them endlessly to our family, our friends, anyone who will listen because they're so cool. It's Paratus. The company is based on some bat biology, and that is part of Kushi's portfolio. So that will be one of the presenting companies you'll get to see, and I believe the CEO is on one of the panels. A couple of the other companies to highlight: Everest Medicines will be coming down from China. Ian Wu will be at the conference. Everest is doing a lot of cool stuff with mRNA, and we have quite a few more: Seastone, Antengene, Albatross, Wa, the diabetes play, just to name a few. And since we woke up our friend from India so early, I'm going to give a little bit of a shout out for the Spotlight on India, which is a new panel we'll be doing this year. Our good friend Vijay from CBC will be moderating the panel. We'll have the CEO from Biocon Biologics, quite a few more people. And as Anirudh said, there is a lot going on in India, and what we're going to be looking at, we know about the generics, we know about a lot of the other things going on there, the supplying the world with so many medicines. What's the next step for innovative Indian biotechs? And we'll have several at the conference for you to meet. Simone, anything you want to highlight? You have, I think, Jamie Rubin will be coming to the event, and she's quite a big name from her Wall Street days. She was at EQRX, a number of other companies, and now she has returned to the world of investment banking. She's at Guggenheim Securities.
So I am fortunate to have 3 great sessions I'm very excited about. Jamie Rubin and I, yes, Jamie is now at Guggenheim. And as you point out, she's actually got many years on Wall Street under her belt, and she's been in biotech for a few years. And so we are actually going to be talking about lessons for CEOs. This is a global issue. These are Asia CEOs and US CEOs and European CEOs should all listen, actually, because I think some of the lessons are universal. But obviously, we will talk to, the audience and the stage of the CEOs here. So she is just full of really great advice, and sometimes when somebody says something, you're like, oh, of course, but you really hadn't thought about it that way. And so she really brings a very fresh angle to her advice and a lot of information behind it. In addition, I am really honored to be speaking with Fida Alsakov. He is the Vice Chairman, Healthcare and Life Sciences for Temasek. And that's going to be a great fireside chat on March the 4th in the morning. And we are going to, really talk about the growth of that ecosystem and, some of the key topics we've talked about here. Kushi, to your point, I think it's really important that we discuss how does Asia retain its innovation. And, I think he's going to be very, very well placed to discuss that in an incredibly interesting way. And I'm also really, I got all of the spots are plum spots, but I also get to introduce and moderate a session that Hideki Shimada, who is the CEO of Chugai Pharma Body Research, he is one of our role models, actually, in the arc of innovation. He has some incredibly interesting approaches that Chugai is taking to antibody engineering. So that's going to be a slightly more sciencey session. And I'm very excited to moderate that one. And that's on Tuesday.
Excellent. Yes. So conference goes March 3rd to 5th. We'll also have a few get-together sessions, a little more social. There'll be an opportunity for one-on-one meetings. And I would be remiss, in fact, it's in my contract. Simone added this to my contract recently. I have to mention AI at least once.
Okay, this is not true, everybody. This is not true. He has to mention tennis, but he does not have to mention AI.
Okay. All right. Well, here to help me out, I'm going to bring back in Anirudh. Where do you want to go with this one?
Yeah. So, Jeff, in fact, interestingly, not a single conversation in the last 1 year for us in the innovation and the biotech space has been devoid of the word AI. So while it's not in your contract, I think everybody else is talking about it. So don't worry about it. I think I would go back to the point that Kushi was making around breakthrough innovation, right? And we have seen countries and companies go up that value chain of saying, are we creating just a fast follower, or we are really creating breakthrough innovation? And that has been going up and up. What is interestingly also happening is number of tech bio companies, and I'm just using that as a phrase versus a biotech, are companies which are coming up with platforms, AI platforms, which are really creating cutting edge new molecules, new science, which was not happening till about 4 or 5 years back. And what we've seen is the number of deals globally and not just in Asia around these platforms has actually almost doubled. Of course, it's a very small percentage, right? So it used to be like 1%, but it has gone to 2.5% in the last 2 years. So that's interesting, right? So there are these small tech bio companies which are creating nice platforms. There are big companies who are saying, or even biotechs who are saying, hey, can we bring this in, which will accelerate my programs, which will allow me to do more breakthrough innovation. And we are seeing a bit of an hub emerge in Asia for that. We are seeing some of it happen in India. We are seeing a lot of it happen in Singapore. We are seeing some shoots of that in Japan, China, and Korea as well. So that's the interesting bit to watch out on as well.
Excellent. Josh, any calls to action here at the end? Any parting words for us to get ready for the conference, or for those who would like to participate at the last minute here?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like we could take this podcast for the next few hours with everyone and continue to chat about it, but we're going to run out of time. So what I would really like to do is make sure that everybody knows how to register. All the folks on the podcast today will be out in Singapore, along with quite a few others that we've mentioned. You can see the entire agenda as well as all the speakers on our website, which is biocenturyeastwest.com. You could also register. We have a special advanced rate discount that lasts through February 24th. So please go ahead and register before that to get the best rate. And partnering's already open. So folks are already using the partnering system to schedule meetings. So now's a real great time to get involved with the event and to make sure you have your partnering meetings set up in advance. So please drop a note to Jeff or Simone or I if you have any questions about the event. We would love to see you out there. I think it's going to be a lot of energy and a lot of really good networking and discussion, and we're looking forward to seeing everyone in Singapore.
Excellent. Well, I'd like to give a special thanks to Kushi of Clavis Bio, Anirudh from McKinsey, and Wendy from BayHelix and Goodwin for joining us today. I think you'll really benefit from coming to hear their thoughts live on stage and maybe grabbing a cocktail or a tea at one of the networking sessions with them. Simone will be in the house. She is happy to discuss her deep-seated feelings about various tennis greats. And, of course, Josh will be there to keep us on track and set the stage for future meetings if you're interested in learning more about BioCentury on the road. Well, thanks all for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you in Singapore.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, BioCentury.
Thanks, everyone.
And thank you for tuning in. We will catch you on Tuesday with our regular edition of the BioCentury This Week podcast. We'll have lots to talk about. As always, just had the nomination of our new Secretary of HHS, so we'll be looking ahead to what to expect. And we'll have quite a few other things to discuss. Monday, of course, a holiday here in the US, hence the Tuesday release. And special thank you to Kendall Square Orchestra for bringing the music for our podcast. and our production guru, Cole Travis.